Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am in lovely, overcast Escazú, Costa Rica, on Sunday, the 14th of September in the year 2025, recording this for each and every one of you that enjoys listening. So, we have a lot to cover, again, because we are indeed in eclipse season. And I want to just say that there were a lot of events this past week, as you know. My teacher used to say that when there is human tragedy, that we don't turn to the astrology. The first thing we do is we tend to the humanness of the events, and we don't go to the astrology. We feel the feelings, we feel the empathy, and astrology can come much later, but it's important to recognize the humanness of such tragedies. And so I don't go looking back at astrology to explain events. I just sort of eventually maybe come around to it, but I'm well aware of astrologically where we were all of this because that's what I do. But I don't go looking at other astrology posts about these things, and I don't read any of that, watch any of that. So I just stay with, the feelings of it rather than the analysis astrologically. So we move forward here on the Golden Astrologer Podcast because we have a lot to talk about for this week ahead, which is what we do here on this podcast. We talk about the upcoming week. So we are at the middle point of the two eclipses. Last Sunday was an eclipse. Today is not. Next Sunday, there's an eclipse. That eclipse occurs on the 21st, which is Solar Eclipse, new moon at 29 degrees of Virgo, and that will occur at 3:54 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday the 21st. Now, this is lots of stuff leading up to this because we had a new moon in Virgo already, and that was 3 weeks ago, and we saw it at 0 degrees of Virgo. So this means that there's been 2 weeks, or there will be 2 times there is a new moon in Virgo this year. So we had it at 0 Virgo on Friday the 22nd of August, and on Sunday the 21st of September we will have a final new moon, but it's a solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. And that is a very unusual thing. It doesn't happen very often. 2 full moons are called a blue moon. 2 new moons are called a black moon. And we don't really see the moon during a new moon, so it's appropriate to be calling it a black moon. But it is at the end of Virgo, and that will end Virgo season next Sunday. And the next day, the sun will enter the sign of Libra on Monday the 22nd, and that is the equinox. So it's fall in the north, and it's spring in the south, and Libra season begins. And before that, though, it's the sun and the moon together in the solar eclipse, new moon together, and the moon will enter the sign of Virgo on Friday morning at 8:23 a.m. And then it's going to pass through the sign of Virgo and get to the end, and then meet with the sun in a solar eclipse. And that is when the moon will go void right after that, and then enter Libra a couple of hours, or not even 2 hours later, an hour and 45 minutes later. So there's a very short hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes void of course moon that day, and then moving into the sign of Libra, which is where the sun will be the next day. So there's a very strong Virgo into Libra vibe going on. So it isn't just, okay, it's now Libra season. The moon is doing this too, and it's doing it first because the moon moves faster. So it will greet the sun and then go void, spend another hour and 45 minutes in the sign of Virgo, and then leave and go into the sign of Libra, where it starts a cycle of Libra prior to the sun starting it on Monday. But this is an interesting place in the zodiac. And of course, the eclipse is the biggest thing happening. And I am going to meet with you again next Sunday on the eclipse. But by the time I record this, it will probably be right after the eclipse, like last time. But this is the biggest event of the week. And it is interesting because of the position of the sun and the moon at the end of Virgo. They will oppose the planet Saturn. Because remember what I said last week, Saturn had passed back into the sign of Pisces right before we had the eclipse. So we were having Saturn leave Aries, move back into Pisces as it was retrograde, and now is sitting in Pisces and moving along slowly backwards in Pisces. And that means anything in Virgo is going to ultimately oppose Saturn as it moves past that point of the end of Virgo and into Libra. So this is important because Saturn is part of the eclipse. And I said last time that I felt Saturn was very present because the eclipse was in Pisces, and then eventually the moon was going to pass over Saturn in Pisces. So Saturn is really present in these eclipses. And so the experience of Saturn at the end of the zodiac is going to get triggered first by the sun, which is going to happen at 1:46 a.m. next Sunday. So it's going to be many hours before the eclipse in the middle of the night in this region of the world. That's Eastern Time, 1:46 a.m. It'll be 11:46 p.m. the night before my time, but the sun will oppose Saturn. And we have this aspect every year. We have the sun where it is opposing Saturn wherever it is, depending on where they are. So now Saturn's getting ready to leave and start a whole new cycle of zodiac again, but it's not finished with Pisces. So when we have this experience, the sun will be in Virgo and it will oppose Saturn. Now, Sun-Saturn opposition is a little tedious, a little self-deprecating, a little lacking in vitality, not the best thing for us because Saturn is very structured and is often pointing a finger and putting its hands on its hip and saying, you have to be responsible and you need to be, practicing regularly your responsibility and discipline. You need to have duty and discipline and structure. And so Sun in Virgo is like, well, I already have all that. I'm very structured. I'm very loyal. I'm very disciplined because Virgo really is. And so it's going to be an interesting experience because once again, there's this opposition. Now, last time we had the sun and the moon in opposition, and this time they're together, but they are opposing Saturn. And so it's interesting because the eclipse could have slipped on into Libra and been in Libra and really been opposite Neptune, but it's not doing that. It's at 29 Virgo and it will oppose Saturn. So then after the sun makes that opposition, then the moon will. But the moon won't do that till actually Sunday when it opposes Saturn and then goes to conjunct the sun. Okay, so the moon's going to oppose Saturn at 2:42 p.m. and that's, a good 12 hours or more after, 13 hours after the sun opposes Saturn. So then moon will oppose Saturn, then they join together shortly thereafter, within the hour. So they are going to be really a lot of activity aspects next weekend. And so we're going to start feeling that new moon coming once that moon moves into Virgo on Friday. And so this is tedious. This is, eclipses eclipse, right? They eclipse. What happens during an eclipse? The light goes away. So last time the moon's light went away. This time the sun's light goes away. And so the light goes away, and whenever there are eclipses, there's something being covered. And that experience of being covered is when we sort of lose light, lose hope, lose feelings of optimism. And this is very common when we have an eclipse. Now, this eclipse is occurring with Saturn. So there's an added oomph of lack of optimism, because there's Saturn, like I said, pointing a finger, standing with his hand on its hip. making sure we're disciplined and dutiful and responsible. And the weight of Saturn, there's a lot of weight and heaviness to Saturn. And so when the light disappears, so does the optimism, so does the hope, so does the thinking that tomorrow is a new day and it's a new energy. And so Saturn compounds that whole feeling, the whole experience. And so the experience is less than savory. It's not some juicy, lovely Venus Jupiter eclipse. It's Saturn. And we will have moments of the possibility of despair. And I don't want to say that we are going to be sitting in despair for days and weeks. It's going to be a flash, a moment, a thing. Maybe you'll feel something for a couple hours. And that's going to be normal. And it's okay, because what we're looking for is the light that returns after the eclipse. And we always look for this light after the eclipse. I think it's great that the next day the sun enters Libra, and the sun is moving out of where the eclipse region is and is moving into a new sign. And also on Monday the 22nd, the day after the eclipse, Mars is entering Scorpio. And that's good because Mars is going to get out of Libra and go into its own sign where it co-rules, where it was the ancient ruler of Scorpio. And that's a good push out of the eclipse energy and a push forward, okay? That's a raw, juicy energy for Mars, and Mars likes that. So that's going to help things, right? Just in the sky, remember I said eclipses don't happen in a vacuum. There's other things going on that are helping move this along and move the energy into a more positive space. And so, you're going to feel that sun opposite Saturn. You might feel it all weekend. You might feel it just on Sunday. If you have sun opposite Saturn in your chart natally, then you are going to feel this very strongly. And this eclipse will probably be really resonant for you and, may bring up some things for you that have to do with your Sun-Saturn opposition. And we call that a recurrence. And you've heard that term many times here before. So if you have a Sun-Saturn opposition, it's really good and important to look at what that represents for you in your chart. And you can certainly sit with me and have a session. You go to my website, goldenastrologer.com, and click book online, and you can get a session with me with your Sun-Saturn opposition, and we can talk about that, because the charge from this will be something very profound and resonant and may bring up an issue for you that is surrounding your natal Sun-Saturn opposition, if you have that. If you're a Saturnine kind of person, you may feel this very strongly. If you are born with the sun at the end of Virgo, you may feel this very strongly. Or if you have a planet at the end of Virgo, you may feel this very strongly. You will also feel this eclipse strongly if you have a planet at 14 degrees of the fixed signs. That would be Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, and Aquarius. So if you have anything at 14 degrees of that, you will probably resonate to this eclipse. There's nothing that I can see in the sky that's happening at that time. But Mars is going to be at that 29 degree Libra, and so it might be a 29 degree resonant thing with Mars and the eclipse as well, because everything's happening at 29. But the next day things move very quickly, and that's good energy. That's good. So I just want to make you aware that after all of this eclipse energy happens, then everything, the sun and the moon, they're both going to move into Libra and oppose Neptune. So this is not, the eclipse is not in Libra, it's in Virgo. But once they move into the new sign, which is moments later, really for the moon, and then the next day for the sun, they are going to oppose Neptune. So I consider this Neptune to be part of the eclipse as well. So there's really a Saturn-Neptune conjunction going on, even though they're in different signs, and they will be opposite this eclipse. And so there's a lot of structure versus flow. There's a lot of freedom versus limitation. There's a lot of this energy that we need to address during this eclipse, okay? This eclipse, believe it or not, is the lesser in strength of the two eclipses. The first one was stronger, it was closer to the node. And this one is a south node eclipse because the node is in Virgo, the south node is in Virgo, but it's not something where it's close to the node, it's further away from the node. It's not close. The other one was very close to the node. So hence it was more powerful. This one is less, and it's moving away from the node. The node and this eclipse are moving in two different directions, and it is, though, strong because of the Saturn Neptune. So there's stuff going on that's different here, and it's more about releasing. And I would really kind of recommend looking at the things you want to release during this eclipse, things that are Virgo in nature, maybe old bad health habits, okay? They're not good health habits, eating the wrong food, anything that could take away from your health rather than vitalize it, okay? And those may become very obvious with Saturn there saying, maybe a little too much ice cream, so let's like step it back on the comfort food. And what's the one thing we're going to reach for when there is high energy eclipses happening? Is comfort food, right? Ice cream, cookies, things that make us happy. Bread, all the carbs. So, Saturn may step in and say, you know what, like cut back on the carbs, get on the treadmill, go for a walk, go for a swim, do the exercise. And the exercise really does help your mental state, which is all about Virgo. Virgo's all about the mental state. And working with your health and your body is really important right now during Virgo eclipses. Okay, so anytime Virgo's involved, we want to really take a look at those things and make some extra effort. It is a new moon. It is a good time to start a new exercise protocol, maybe a new diet. The eclipse season is not quite over, but the eclipse corridor will be over. So, I don't think anything about starting exercise things is bad during eclipses anyway, just because you want to always, think about your body and your health and this temple that we're in that houses our souls. So it's important to recognize those things and make effort towards having a healthy body during a Virgo eclipse, right? And so maybe you'll get some new ideas. Maybe you'll start going for walks with a friend. Maybe you'll join a gym with a friend. Maybe you'll go swimming with a buddy. Maybe you'll just find the time to make some more healthier choices in your life. So those are good things for this eclipse. I gave a list of things last week. If you didn't listen to my podcast, I suggest going back and listening to it. I gave you all the protocols that I use to keep my spirits and emotions moving forward and clear as I process difficult astrology, okay, and difficult emotions during astrology, okay, like this, astrology like this. So I feel like there is this gap right now. We move from one eclipse, we're moving to the other, and so this is the in-between time. This is the in-between weekend. We're in the in-between week. Tomorrow, Monday, the 15th of September, moving on to the rest of the week, that there are other things going on. Tomorrow, there will be a very nice relationship between Venus and Mars. Venus is in Leo. She likes that. She's feisty. She's sexy. She's glitzy and glamoury. She is sextiling Mars in Libra. Mars does not love Libra, but they are talking to each other nicely. They're making a nice exchange. So this is positive energy for relationships, for friendships, for creativity. That's definitely creative because Libra is creative and they love things like design and aesthetics. So I give them a lot of creativity credits along with Leo. So they're both very creative, artistic signs where these planets are. So that's the big aspect tomorrow, actually, at 11:04 p.m. Eastern time. There's nothing else on my calendar for tomorrow. There are the ongoing things, of course. There's Saturn and Neptune, and there is this other relationship happening this week, which is that Chiron is getting quite a bit of attention. And so there's Venus trining Chiron on Tuesday, and that's a very pleasant aspect. That's looking at a way of healing our wounds, soothing ourselves, sending love to ourselves, a good self-love aspect for Tuesday, the 16th of September. This is very good. And then there's Mars is opposite Chiron, which is not as self-lovey as Venus trining Chiron is, but Mars may bring up the things that we recognize as stuff we want to heal and we want to take action towards, the places we want to heal in our lives. So this can be considered a very healing oriented week, places where we need to heal. Okay. And, we look at those as we look at, the Virgo eclipse, Venus and Mars talking to Chiron. The moon is in Cancer right now. This is a place of nurturance and tenderness and comfort and caring in this moment. So the moon will be in its own sign until Tuesday, when it will Tuesday night very late, or actually Wednesday morning, it will go into Leo, depending on where you live. So it'll go into Leo, and then it spends some time in Leo. And that's very gregarious and creative and a little more exciting and fiery, so that we can sort of enjoy the bounciness of that moon in Leo. And so then Mercury is going to talk to Saturn also this week. So Mercury is often close to the eclipses, and Mercury will be already in Libra by the time the eclipse occurs, but right now it's going to be passing in these days opposite Saturn, and that means it will touch the eclipse point prior to the eclipse. So it might give us a preview of the eclipse, and that's going to be Wednesday afternoon in the Eastern time zone, 1:47 p.m. Mercury in Virgo will oppose Saturn. And then the next day, Mercury will enter Libra. So a planet is changing signs this week. It will enter Libra at 6:06 a.m., and it's going to then oppose Neptune that evening. And what's interesting is it's positioned at the beginning of Libra, which is, of course, where the sun and the moon are going to be going later at the end of the week after the eclipse. The Mercury will, again, pave the way for all of this. So Mercury's going to oppose that Neptune. It's going to talk to Uranus in Gemini very nicely, and then it's going to speak to Pluto very nicely. So Mercury is in a position of talking to all the outer planets, and this is good because it's getting information for us. Mercury is the planet of information, communication, speaking, writing, thinking. And if you want to start tuning into what this eclipse means for you, well, that you can start to do earlier in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, as Mercury touches these same points that the moon, which is going to be jazzed from the eclipse, is going to touch later on Sunday evening. So the moon, which is always governing sort of the eclipse, solar, lunar, it is going to give us some aspects that already are going to be made by Mercury. So Mercury will talk to the planets, Saturn, and then Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, which is a lot of heavy hitters. Mercury has a lot to say to them, and they will have a lot to say back to Mercury. And so this conversation is happening Wednesday and Thursday. Consider this a preview. What information are you getting? Are you at work and they're saying, you know what, we need to restructure this, and here's the details, and then you have to do some work around that? Maybe that's part of it. Maybe whatever you're doing is going to need to make some adjustments and tweaks and changes. And then the eclipse comes and sort of touches on those same things. So this is really very interesting. We're getting information about this before it actually occurs. And so what does that mean for each of us? It means that we have access to knowing some information and access to feel into what the eclipse represents to us, rather than sitting waiting going, I'm going to get smacked across the head by an eclipse that's opposing Saturn. Oh my God. And we get a preview. So Mercury's doing us a favor. Mercury's saying, hey, look, this is what's going on, and here's some information about it. and here's some useful Mercury can be very practical, useful information about what's happening for you during this time. And where do these planets fall for you? Where's the end of Virgo into Libra for you? And then where's the end of Pisces into Aries for you? Because that's the journey that Mercury and these planets are all taking. So what we're seeing Mercury do is going to first be on Thursday. The moon will do the same thing, touch all those outer planets, which are all speaking transformational languages to Mercury and then to the moon. So like, hey, there's a little dip of Neptune, mystery and intuition and vision. And then there's Uranus, which is, some great ideas and innovation and freedom and liberation. And then there's Pluto, which is about transformation. They are not all hard aspects. There's a lot of smoothness going on here, supporting of the energies that we're learning about and the things that are going to surface for us. So Moon is going to do this same journey on Sunday the 21st, and then the following week, next week, the Sun will start to talk to the planets the same way as it moves through the beginning stages of Libra. But we'll talk about that on next week's podcast because we have a lot to talk about next week's podcast, okay? So on the eclipse, I will see you again, and we will talk about these things. But there's a lot of Mars action going on that following week too. But we're not worried about that right now. We're finishing up this eclipse season next Sunday. And, when the Mercury makes these transformational aspects and conversations with the outer planets, it does give us the opportunity to change our mind, to change the old thought patterns that are no longer useful for us, to clear out the thoughts that are counterproductive to moving forward with our lives. This is a wonderful, nice, clearing space for that energy. This is great. And so Eclipse is going to ask us to let go of a lot of things. Eclipse is going to ask us to release and get rid of all the stuff that doesn't serve us anymore. And Eclipse also may provoke a few sensitive points as the shadow comes and we might not feel as optimistic. But know always during an eclipse, if you have a shadow of emotion, the light is coming back. And it's always that. It's like, am I losing hope? Am I losing something that's near and dear to me? And then what happens really is the light comes back and it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. All right. And then there's a sense of relief. Once the eclipse is over, there's energies afterwards. There's always energy afterwards. And then, there's the days after the eclipse. And then what happens is eclipse season ends 2 weeks after the final eclipse. So after next Sunday, there will be another lunation, which is a full moon on October 6th in Aries. And that will be the kicking out of the eclipse season. And it will be finished for another 6 months till we go to eclipse season next year. So this is great. This means we are winding this down. We no longer have to hold on in like what's going to happen, and we're not going to wallow in what if energy, and we're going to use the information Mercury is giving us this week as a preview to what we need to do during the eclipse and how we need to handle it. So it's important. It's good to pay attention this week. It's good to listen. It's good to take in whatever you're hearing and don't ignore it. Okay? Because this is one of those opportunities where you're being given information, and if you go, I'm not going to pay attention to that, the eclipse is going to come and say, I meant that. I meant it. What I told you before the other day, I meant it. And you go, oh, okay. All right. I see. So we move along and we respect Mercury's position. Mercury's getting secrets revealed. Mercury's getting the information. So this is very important and very interesting. So that's going to play out in a very interesting way. In the meantime, if you feel like you are in need of support during this time, please contact me. You can contact me through my website by booking a session. Go to thegoldenastrologer.com, click book online, and you can book a Reiki session. You can book an astrology session. We could talk about all of this relative to your chart. And you can contact me, info@thegoldenastrologer.com or deb@debmcbride.com, and I can help you decide what kind of session you might need. Maybe you want to go more into mentoring with me 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, so that you can really explore up-leveling your life in a new way and to a new way, while we have still those outer planets changing signs and a lot of activity up until the new year. And this year is fast ending. I mean, we are already mid-September, and it's only another quarter or so that we're in this year, and then we're done. It's like really how unbelievably quickly this is all flying. Okay, so September is half over. I can't believe it. It feels like it just began. But I always say things like that, right? So moving along, if you would like to join me in any of those sessions, you can go to my website, or you can contact me and find out more about things. And you can also find me on Instagram, which is Golden Astrologer. So all of those options for you. I wish you a beautiful week. I will see you on the eclipse, or I'll be here on the eclipse. I'll see you on the internet all week. Many blessings, much gratitude to each and every one of you for listening, and love to all during this eclipse season.